demo taking you through source through to completion. So we'll see how it goes. Out of interest, how many of you guys consider yourself techies? Cool, and how many non-techies? Right, cool. So the non-techies will like the first half, and the techies will like the second half. So stop me, heckle, however you feel. So we start nice and easy. So a bit about, I guess, the background about me. I'm John. I work on the A14 project. What we're doing, the work we're about to commence, is to move all of our data that's being presented in Power BI through serverless services hosted in Microsoft Azure. So I'll try not to trip over. This is basic pipeline stuff. So you've got your source data, could be anything. You've got APIs, you've got spreadsheets, anything goes. What we want to do is we want to get things through a nice, consistent turn-the-handle style pipeline. So we transform the data, which is something that Nick was showing earlier, combining columns, cleaning data, getting it all into a nice, neat state, through to something that's much more clean, much more optimized, which we can push through onto Power BI for our dashboards. So that's kind of a higher level view of what happens for the pipeline. In reality, it's not quite as clean cut as that. So first of all, you're sitting with a blank sheet. What is it? What are you talking about? What are your data sources? So what do you have? The next question then is, well, actually, what is important to the users? What's important to the business? What are the key performance indicators? What are the charts? What's kind of important, I guess? Then it comes to a point, well, actually, now we need to build a data model that meets that. So you kind of start at one end, then you go to the other end, and then you kind of meet in the middle. So it's never quite as clean cut as a pipeline going left to right. The build is a lot more fluid, I guess. So then the next question is, once you've designed your data model, you kind of know what you're doing, you're looking at frequency. Is this a commercial data set with a monthly position? So you want a snapshot in time? Or is it more of a live data set? Is it a daily? All of this sort of stuff you're kind of figuring out at this stage. And then, yeah, you've got your pipeline. You've got your data model because you've explored the data in Power BI. You know what your import routine, your timing should be. You build your models. Absolutely awesome. You reach the other end and you present your dashboard to your client. It's never right. First time, business changes its mind, stuff happens. So kind of what happens in reality is it's a cyclical evolution of the pipeline. Everyone with me so far? Cool. Right, so into a little bit more detail. So as I go through this, I'm getting more and more into the kind of the nuts and bolts of how it's put together. So your sources. What we want to do is we want to extract them as cleanly, as neatly from a nice, clean source as possible. So ranging in the top being like the perfection, what we want to pull from is APIs provided by cloud service providers, software as a service kind of stuff. Next level down we can do, depending on what the source is, what the tool is that you're dealing with, you can do a direct database connector. Then you've got others that will do a CSV extract and dump it somewhere. And then you can just extract the data from CSV. And then construction industry, Excel is everywhere, so it's going to be around. So I'm not going to show you in my live demo, but Excel is one of the most prevalent sources that we deal with. And then how do we get that from that, if I go back one, from here to here. So this is how my slides are working. We'll go here to here, then we'll go there, then we'll go there. So we want to land from the source into a bucket. And this one here is the DataLake in Azure. So I'll take you through that in a minute. And we can use logic apps. Who knows what logic apps are? Cool. I'll show you logic apps and I'll show you DataFactory. So these are tools that you can use to pull the data out and land it in this raw data state, which is my Mr. Messy bucket. So I've not got technical yet, so this is the warm-up. So Mr. Messy here, this is raw data. You're pulling data from a system, you've got tables going everywhere, you've got dates that are inconsistent, this hasn't been cleaned. The idea then is you clean the data and you get to Mr. Perfect on the right-hand side, which is then your optimized data set. So you're only producing stuff up this end, which you need to report on. And you can use DataFactory along with DataLake analytics to sort of perform those updates to the data. And you can use R and Python as well in there. But I haven't included it because I don't know it very well. Cool? What you can do then at the front end is you can push your optimized data layer into one single PowerBI desktop file, and then you can connect to that one file on many different PowerBI desktop files. But we won't really cover that in this session because there's just not enough time. Right, what could go wrong? Live demo. So what I wanted to do was do a demo from a clean slate. So there's no kind of Blue Peter. Here's one I made earlier, although there's a little bit because I had to make sure it wasn't going to fall over. So I'll start with a clean logic apps to start with and DataFactory so you guys can see how it all connects in Azure. So feel free to heckle. Right. So you log into Azure, portal.azure.com. As a quick overview of Azure, hang on, let me see if I can. Down this left-hand side, you've got your highlighted areas. I normally start with resource groups. That's your chunking of services. So this is me showing me A14's dirty laundry a little bit, so it's a bit untidy in here. But an example, now this is Blue Peter style. You open up a resource group and you've got your services listed and you've got logic apps, you've got databases. This is back-end Azure services. So everything that Amy went through this morning, everything is in here. So what we want to do is for the demo, I want to take weather data. So I want to grab from Dark Sky API the weather right now for this GPS location. Anyone use Postman? Okay. Now this is Blue Peter style. Here's one I prepared earlier. So this URL here is the Dark Sky Weather API link. If I hit that, it doesn't need authentication because it's done using the unique ID. And then here up the top is the GPS coordinates of right here. So what I've done is I just send that. I just hit it. And you guys can do this. And I'll put the links on Slack so you can have a go. It outputs a data set in JSON format. What I want to do is grab that and save it. Hang on. If you haven't got Postman, whoops, you can also run it in a browser. Whoops. So just tap wherever you are, you can do it. I might just save it from here. Oops, not print. Save as. Hackathon. Here's one I've made earlier, but let's do it again. Version 2. So all I've done is clicked on a link and downloaded the output from it. And if I refer back to my pipeline-y bit, we're kind of starting, we know we want dark sky data, we know we want some kind of report, but let's jump straight to there, throw the data direct from dark sky into Power BI, and just have a little look, have an explore of the data. And here is one I made earlier, but let me just get the data. So in Power BI, you can grab data from anywhere, basically. This particular one is in JSON format. That's the file I just downloaded. And this is the point where when it becomes a bit more real. You're working with someone, maybe they don't know what it is because they don't know what data you can provide. It's more of a sort of working with the business, whoever your client is, to figure out what's important to them. Let's just go, within a JSON is a hierarchical data structure, so I can go into currently and just grab some data like that. And we've got things like current temperature, wind speed, cloud cover, visibility, that sort of thing. But all I want to do is just convert that into a table, close and apply. Let's just whack that in and see what we're looking at. So when you're dealing with, so this is a simple example, but you could be dealing with like P6 for planning data, or you could be dealing with finance data. This exercise takes a lot longer when you've got like multiple tables and stuff like that. And then you can just start playing around in Power BI. So this has pulled out two values, name and value. Aha, and this is where it all goes wrong. So let's give it a background so you can see it. Live demos, wait a minute. So because the data's come through, we need to give it a bit of, we need to sort it out in Power BI basically, because this has come through with text here. So I want to get rid of those two, and I want this to be a number field. This wasn't supposed to be a Power BI demo, but hold on 2 seconds. Transform that. No. That was it. Let's make that a decimal number and just get rid of errors. Go. Right. So now what I want to do is I want to look at two values. Let's look at value and that, and let's look at temperature and wind speed. What was going to do? You can plot it however. So the point here is you've opened the data from the source, you're having a look to see what you want to push through your pipeline. Right, that's that. So let's say we want to look at pulling data for the current time into a database for weather and temperature for this particular location. Right, let's get to the nuts and bolts then. So in Azure, we want to do a logic app. So a logic app works, it's a trigger-based flow engine, I guess. It's the same as Microsoft Flow, if you've ever used that in Office 365. You can use it to react to changes in things, so SharePoints and databases and all sorts of things. But I'll show you, it's probably easier to explain. So in Azure, to create a new service, you just click Add, and then if you know what you're looking for, you can do a search and do Create. And we're going to do Hack Weather 2. You select, no spaces. You can choose your resource group, where it's residing, and I won't go through log analytics. But all you do is you fill this in, and this is now creating in Azure the Logic App service. And up the top, you can see it deploying, and then it says, right, it's ready. Go to resource. Logic apps, it gives you a few wizards to kind of start off. If you look at these and you can see one that fits quite closely to what you want to do, that's fine. Normally I go with a reoccurrence. So if it's a commercial or some kind of finance, you could run it overnight. If it's something else, you could run once a month. But if we run this, let's say every 10 minutes, and your options there. This is just whatever we then follow this little user thing, this little wizard with, will then happen at this frequency. What's that? Well, it is a schedule, so yeah, every 10 minutes this will fire whatever I tell it to do next. So the sort of the trick to kind of getting logic apps to work with DataFactory, which is where we'll go to next, is I'll try to think of the best way to work with this. You want the two to work well together. So there's parameters that you can pass through from one to the other. And this works well when you're dealing with time-based things. So things that are happening quite frequently. So you want to make sure that what you initiate in logic apps flows through the file that's then created in DataLake, has the right file name that DataFactory can recognize and pull out and then do the next stage in the process. Is everyone still with me? I tried this at home last night. It didn't feel so complicated. But I'll carry on. So what we want to do is we want to create a variable with that file name. The file name that's going to be the name of the file that lands in DataLake. And the reason we want to set it here is that we want logic apps to use the same one that DataFactory does. And what we're doing is just this bit here, this transformation bit. So we're kind of getting the raw data into a Mr. Messy state. Okay? So variable, initialize variable, and we'll call it file name. Make it a string. So what's the most unique thing about this point is basically time, and we can use something called ticks. Ticks is the number of seconds since the 1st of January 1970 something, I think. Doesn't matter what it was, but it'll give you a unique number. So we want to build up this. Right, sorry, this I jumped ahead a bit because this bit here now is the way of putting code into logic apps. So it's like Excel formulas. There's not a lot of options you can do, but you can create date and time, kind of what's the current hour, what's the current date kind of thing. Maths, adds, subtracts, string concatenation, basic stuff. You're building up a little bit of a formula as you go in that tiny little window. That's it. So the next step is I want to go to that hyperlink that's dark sky weather API. So all of these services available in logic apps you can browse. The API, HTTP, just very simple service available, and I'll paste in that link. Oh no, not there. That's a get. There. No authentication required, and that's it. So what this is now doing is every 10 minutes we initialize a variable, which is that ticks, which is a unique number, and then we're going to go to this dark sky API and pull back a JSON file. We don't actually want to do much with that because we just want to land that file in DataLake. So the next step is to go to DataLake DataLake, and upload a file. Sign in. Right, hold on, I need my file. Passwords. I have a data lake already set in and set up. Wait a moment. So data lake looks like this one. It's another service, the same as you get a database, same as you got Logic Apps, same as you got DataFactory. It sits in Azure, just like anything else, and I just want the name of it, so I can pop that in there so it knows where it's going. The file path, then this is where we use that file name. So this is going to be, we're going to have to build another little formula up so that we can put the file in. And I'll use string concats at the top. Data platform. And this is basically the same as creating any old file structure. It doesn't have to be here. Call it hack. Call it weather. For A14, we use a little bit more around, there's a better naming convention. So this is where we use departmental shortcodes. We use dates. We use a lot more than that, but I'll skip past that bit for this. And then we want to include that file name. So we grab the file name variable, and this is a JSON file, so we terminate it with that. In the content, when you're browsing around Logic Apps, when you click in a folder, it will give you the available things that you can put in here. So we're using the HTTP step, which is that. Variable step is that. So it gives you, the WYSIWYG will help you kind of work out which bit goes with what. And we want to grab the body of that file, or the body of that response that's come out of this particular API call. Overwrite no is fine, so we can just save that. So that's the basic Logic Apps. We're running every 10 minutes. We're querying an API, pulling that content out as a JSON file and loading it into DataLake. All in those 4 steps. Is that cool? I'll keep going. So with Logic Apps, once you've saved it, you can hit run to run a job, just to test it out. And while that's running, I'll open Storage Explorer. So if you're here for Amy's session this morning, Storage Explorer is a way to browse blob storage or data lake. And you can see in the background that that's run successfully. There's a bit of debugging. You can click on these and work out the inputs and outputs. So it's correctly pulled out the data from the API. So that's worked. And now we want to go into Data Lake. Wait for it. So this is the Storage Explorer. You've got these blob accounts, and then you've got Data Lake in here as well. Normally this is faster. Maybe it's a Microsoft building, get them to turn it up a bit. Let's refresh. So what we're expecting to see is that file .json, which the file name will just be the unique number for the number of seconds since 1970, whatever. Oh, this is annoying. So the idea is anyway, it flows in using DataLake. Sorry, using logic apps. And that gets us from, sorry, this is my slide. That gets us from here to here. The next step, which we'll do using DataFactory, is to pull the data from that JSON file out of the JSON and into a database. And that's the bit where we just want temperature and wind speed for the current time. Oh, sorry, why is this slow? Oh. No, I think I need to allow this IP address from this building in onto it. So hold on. Access. Here we go. Allow. What are we? Reactor. So this is DataLake in Azure as a secure storage. Is not letting me on because I'm not. It doesn't recognize where we are. So I need to give it an IP address. Can I get current? Current external. Right, so I want to grab that. Normally you just do this once and then it would be done and forgotten. Right, refresh. Oh, that one then. Hold on. Oh, damn. It'd be cool to show you this because it's kind of key to it. Let's try VM. I don't know if this will work, but it's worth a go. Come on. Right, we'll let that think, and I can start to set up DataFactory. Right, so in order to do DataFactory, it's the same process as Logic Apps. You would go to resource group and find where we're putting everything. Find a new service to create, and then we'll go to DataFactory. DataFactory. Create a new DataFactory, and we'll call this Hack DataFactory 2. Put it in the current resource group. Don't want to go there. That'll do. We don't need Git for now. Create. So this will then go into Azure, spin up a new service. So the great thing about Azure is it's easy. You just spin it up, try it out. If it's not working, turn it off again. And then that's now created. So these little notifications will tell you how you're getting on. And we can go to the new DataFactory. Took me ages to kind of get used to DataFactory. You kind of head for author and monitor. That's where most of it sits. When I click on that, it will open up the user interface for DataFactory. The main kind of building of everything is this pencil here. You can go through and view kind of activity, any that have failed, past, statuses, debug. That's in this red circle. But to start by building, you go through this pencil. So we want to create a pipeline. So originally we would know that data now sits as a JSON file in DataLake. And hopefully I can show you. Here we go. That one. No. That one. go. Ugh. Slow VM, this one. Here we go. Hey. So we put it in data platform, hack, weather, and it's been run, because it's taken so long to do it, it's probably run again now because it's going every 10 minutes. And you can see those are the number of seconds from whenever it was. So we've got a unique file name and it's a JSON file and it's sitting nicely there. What we want to do now is we want to pick this up from DataFactory and import it into a SQL database. In DataFactory, so the first thing you do is you create a pipeline, just by this little plus here and a pipeline. Default name is pipeline 1, but we can change that. So this is going to be hack weather. What you've got in DataFactory is a number of services to move and transform data. Simple ones, you're just copying from one place to another. Another ones, you can link in custom code, you can link in Python code, use SQL if you know DataLake analytics. The list goes on, but what I wanted to do now is just give you a bit of a flavor. So we just copy from one to the other. So with a simple copy, you have to tell it what the source is and what the destination is. So the source is going to be that JSON file. So we click on source, do a new connection to DataLake. So we pick from, and then on the right hand side you've got loads of different sources that you can use. We're going to use DataLake. We know it's a JSON file, and here we go. So what we've done now by doing that little step is it's created a data set here. So when you're building up a few of these, you want to sort your naming convention out a little bit tidier than that. And you can also use folders as well if you want to sort this into folders by adding folders. But for this, I'm going to keep going because otherwise I'll lose you. We want to connect to the Azure data lake that I have put the file into. So naming would be better then as well. So we're going to go into, no, that one, and principal. This is where I need this code. So this took me ages to figure out. So in order to link DataFactory to DataLake, you need to enable what's called a Active Directory application. If I quickly go there and show you where it is, I won't explain why it is. So in Azure Active Directory in here, you can go to app registrations. All I can recommend is you Google it because this is how it how the two things talk to each other. So you create a new application and then you get a client ID, which you can then use in here as your service principal ID. The terms are different, which makes Googling really hard. But if you'll get into this, come talk to me because I'll tell you what to Google. It took me ages. Then you can do a test connection and then you're working. Right, cool. So that's your connector, but that's just opened the door to DataLake. You need to tell it where in DataLake the file is. So you can just do a browse, data platform, hack, weather, and oh, we've got another one now. Just grab one, doesn't have to be the latest. So what we want to do is we want to connect to one first, and then we'll link up the file name bit so that it only takes the latest, if there's time. What we do then is we go to Schema and import. And this is now going to DataLake, grabbing that file and pulling the schema out. So we can see it's pulling out time for the current reading, and we're getting most of it there. So that's enough for that to start us off. Now we want to go to the destination called sync, and we're going to put this in a database. So I need to do a new connection to a database, go to SQL, and I'm going to need a new one of these as well. Hang on, did I click the right one? SQL, yeah. I need a new service. Right, so it's the same form again, but this time we're connecting to a database. We're going to Hackathon. Database is called Hackathon version 3. And I'm just going to use the SQL credentials I've got. Username, Hackathon edit, password. So this account has insert access to this database, and we can do a quick test to make sure it's working. So it works. Finish that. If we want to go in, because now we've told it which database we're connected to, but we want to tell it which table we're going to insert into. So as part of this connection, which is now another data set here, we want to tell it what table we're going to insert to. And now this is Blue Peter style because I've built one already called Masterclass. We'll do the same again because in order to merge the two data sets, we need the schema from both. So we'll import this one. And that's got the first two are auto-created. Ticks is the timestamp. Temperature is just a number, and so is wind speed. So once we've got that information, we can go back to the main kind of pipeline bit. And then in order to then map the two data sets together, we would import schemas from both the source and the destination. Loading. Right, cool. So what we want to do now is tell it from the source where it's going to land in the database. So the first two are actually automated anyway, so we can get rid of those. And that's all down to the database design. We want time, so we'll grab time from the source. And when you're dealing with any old source, this is, once you know the data, you know what you're trying to map. We want temperature, and we want wind, which was wind speed. That is basically it for the DataFactory. And what we can do is we can run a debug step, and that will do a test run through it all. And it will give you a kind of output of how it's going. Refresh. Whee! So it ran fine. So that's all pretty cool. So there's a chunk now where I can go into loads of detail about how you link that file name through to DataFactory using parameters. But I think, given time, I'm going to skip that, if that's cool. So what I did last night was I built this with the parameters. So it's now been running every 10 seconds and loading the data into this weather table. So in SQL Explorer, if I just have a look at Masterclass, it's been running. So it's been quite happily ticking over since I finished, which was 8:45 last night. What you can do then in PowerBI is build your dashboard off of that data, and you can see the temperature for the last 24 hours. So at 8 o'clock last night, or 9 o'clock, it was about 17 degrees, low of 14, and then right now, which is, what's the time now? 42, which was the one I just did the debug run on, it's 32 degrees. So it's hot. Why are we in here? I think I need a beer and my shorts. That's kind of it. I've got more techie stuff to show, but I think I probably techied you out. But the idea is you've got, where's my slides? So to step it through, you don't know what data you've got to work with until you open it and have a look. That's basically it. The best way to do that is with whoever it is you're building it for. So sit with them, find out what it is they need, what's important, KPIs, charts, histograms, the lot. What's the important stuff that they want to know about their data? You can then do a very quick plug into PowerBI and start play around with it. And for some cases on A14, we've been playing with the data for 6 months and they still haven't decided what it is that's important. Because it's only really worth doing the pipeline when you've got a reasonably mature kind of customer, they know what they want. Logic Apps, great tool for extracting data out of anywhere. The plugins are endless. SharePoint, APIs, Salesforce, the list is as long as your arm. I've dropped in this, so this is where you start working with the parameters and a better naming convention for your folder structure in DataLake. But yeah, you can use Logic Apps just to grab data and put it on DataLake. DataFactory then is where you do more of the heavy lifting. You grab data, you transform it, and you push it into the Mr. Perfect end state optimized. And it's kind of it. There's things that I haven't gone through, like the connection of parameters, which I managed to do last night, which is quite cool. You can take this forward. So uSQL is a way of executing the joins and combining data and the stuff that Nick was showing in R. You can do it super fast for massive data sets using DataLake Analytics. IoT data where you're flowing through, so I did the 10-minute one, but if you're doing IoT stuff up to the second, then you can use a better way of doing it than Logic Apps. You can use Stream Analytics. And then go to C# and function apps for really difficult stuff. Cool? I think that's me. Any questions? Sorry, we got a bit techie here. I got a bit carried away. Is that all right? I'll be definitely going for a beer if anyone's got any related questions a bit later. Cool. Cheers.